Are you officially an employee? Is that what it is, Jamie? Are you? What's your title?
Director of Communications.
Director of Communications for Mark Harrington's Created Equal. And Jamie, I don't know if you guys know this, Jamie and Mark and Seth and all those guys over there, they're training up young kids, and they're taking young kids all across America. They were just in Chicago just last week leafleting the neighborhood of the guy who runs the company Stericycle, which picks up the dead babies at Planned Parenthood. So they took all these young kids and went into the neighborhood and were putting flyers on people's doors. So Jamie and Mark and Seth and Echo, they are doing unbelievable, great stuff with young kids, because if we don't catch the next group, we don't get those young kids, we're going to be in trouble.
Hallelujah, amen.
So Jamie agreed to come over here and give us a little abortion 101, and she said, golly, well, I could go for 4 hours, and she probably could. So we're going to not let her go 4 hours. If she goes for 4 hours, she'll be talking to herself. But she's going to give us a great apologetic on the whole abortion issue. So Jamie, beer. You allow beer in here, Pastor Bill?
I'll allow that.
You'll allow that one in here. Jamie with Created Equal. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
We'll let Coach leave. Go ahead.
Get out of here. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here today, for sticking out for the rest of the afternoon. I was happy to hear you guys went to Founders this morning. That's right? Yep. Was it good?
Never good.
Yeah. You go there and you feel like you're doing nothing, but you know you're doing the right thing and you are doing your duty.
I say this, I maybe said it to some of it. We had two guys went today for the first time.
Right.
They were undone with what they saw. You can talk about abortion all you want to. Till you go, you can't explain it to somebody. To see those young girls get out of their car and walk into that clinic, and the reality of what was going on there, they were really impacted by it today. So we've got to get more folks out there.
Yeah, exactly. And the more people that go out there, the more people it brings, so it's crucial. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. A couple years ago, I was getting my...
Point here, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Are you up there? I'm sorry. She may need you to push the button for her.
1 second. Yeah, it's not working. Should I?
We get that aiming.
Just tell him to do it for you.
Next.
Okay. All right. Next.
There we go.
Perfect, thank you. So a couple years ago, when I first started getting involved with Create Equal, getting my feet wet in the pro-life movement, I came across this news story. It's the story of Ebony Wilkerson. Does anyone remember her name? Yeah, Ebony Wilkerson was a mother of 3 children who one day decided she couldn't handle parenting anymore and drove her SUV off of Daytona Beach into the ocean. She jumped off the highway, got into the beach, and just drove it straight in there. She walked out, her kids were left in the car, 3 children. She was also pregnant at the time, so her preborn child was safe, but her 3 children were left in the SUV screaming for help. People around the SUV saw what happened. They rushed out of their cars, they rushed into that SUV, they grabbed the children and got them out. The children later told these people that they had heard their mother saying, "I'm taking you to a better place, just hold on, I'm taking you to a better place," as she drove them into the ocean. So when I heard this story, I was outraged, right? Who wouldn't be? But the funny thing was about this is that I was getting involved in the pro-life movement. I realized that all of society was also outraged with me. And I thought, that's weird, I'm not used to that. Because our society is not at all outraged about the killing of preborn children. The 2,900 children that will die today, that died at Founders today, that died yesterday at Founders, the children that will die next week, all those children society doesn't care about. They have deemed them unequal, not worthy of our attention. So I felt like the story of Ebony Wilkerson got perfectly at the prejudice that our society is now facing. I don't think anything points it out better. And our job really, when we're talking to people about abortion, is to point out the prejudice in them, to point out the fact that they think some humans are not equal to other humans. That is the goal when we're talking to people. So my goal here is to just give you some tactics, some conversational tools that when you're at that lunch with a friend and they say, well, I'm pro-choice, or they say, my sister had an abortion, or you're with other friends and someone mentions it, brings up the topic, that's your opportunity to have an impact on them, to change their mind. So that's really my goal here. We're going to go ahead and just dive right in. Feel free to take notes. The first thing that you want to do when talking with people is to ask them the most crucial question. There are really two crucial questions. I'll get to the other one later, but the first one is absolutely essential. You can't miss this. And that is to ask of the person you're talking to, what is the preborn? What is the preborn? Can you go ahead and hit next, actually? Because really, it all boils down to this question. When you're talking with someone about abortion, we know that women, when they're pregnant, are pregnant with something. They don't have a pumpkin hiding in there. They aren't just growing because they're eating too many Doritos. We know that something else is going on. And we know that is a human being. Now, this seems pretty obvious to you and me. But to them, it's not. It's not. They're blinded. We see that. We're amazed at how blinded they are. But I always point out to them, if a woman is pregnant with a human being, then really there is no justification for abortion. Because human beings, we know, are of inherent dignity and worth. Other people know this. You don't have to be a Christian to know that. You know that just by recognizing the fact that if I take out a gun right now and shoot somebody here, that there will be police here in minutes to arrest me. Thank goodness, right? That's the right thing. That's justice. And so we need to point out that inconsistency. That, as Greg Kokel from Stand to Reason says, if the preborn are human, then no justification is adequate. If the preborn aren't human, no justification is necessary. I think you understood what I was trying to say. That might have been backwards. So when we ask this question, that is really the crucial question. What is the preborn? That is the goal. However, a lot of times, your friend or the person you're talking to, and we're on campus talking to people, they don't even let us get to that question. They stop us right there and say, hold up, are you telling me that that woman over there who has no money, who leads a horrible life, who's being abused by her boyfriend, that she should bring a child into this world that she can't take care of? Is that what you're saying? And what they're doing here is they're clouding the morality of abortion, the moral debate, with all kinds of circumstances, all kinds of terrible situations. What are some situations you guys have heard that say, oh, well, that justifies abortion, that's why we need abortion? Rape. That's the one we hear most often, for sure.
Poor. Oh, they're poor.
For what?
Child's poor.
Yep, they're poor. The child will have a bad life. Anyone else?
They're deformed, they're not perfect.
Yeah, they're deformed, they aren't perfect.
I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go to college.
I can't afford it, gotta go to college, I have my career.
Too many children already.
Yep, that's one we hear a lot. That's actually one we hear a lot at the clinic, sadly, is I have children at home already. Yep, another one we also hear is my baby has Downs. Kids can't feel pain, lots of those. So when this happens, what you need to do is to get back to the moral question of what is the preborn, and you do that by framing the debate. And the question you ask for that is to simply ask them, would you kill a born person because of that circumstance? Because of that X circumstance? Would you kill a born person? So when they say, well, for example, I was talking to a woman at the University of Minnesota, and she was passing by. We had her display, and I could tell she was ticked off, so I wanted to talk with her. And she's walking on by, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about abortion?" And she said, "Oh, it's this is unnecessary. This we need abortion. This display is awful." And I said, "Okay, so that's what you think." And as I talked with her, she told me she was a psychology major. She was actually getting her doctorate. And then she told me, if I get pregnant tomorrow, I'm going to have an abortion the next day. I said, oh gosh, what do I do? What do I say to that, Lord, And I asked her, I said, well, do you think it's okay if a woman is, in the same situation you are, if she's going to get her doctorate in psychology, if she's on a career path, but say she has a 2-year-old at home, and that 2-year-old is holding her back and she can't take care of that 2-year-old. Do you think she should be able to kill that 2-year-old because she can't take care of her? Or should she find another solution? Maybe she has a family member. Maybe there's someone who would adopt that 2-year-old. I said, do you think that's the same situation? She said, oh, no, of course not. I said, oh, really? She said, no, that 2-year-old you're talking about is a human being. That fetus is not. I said, oh, so that's the issue. Is it a human being we're talking about? Another example, sorry, can you go forward 2 slides? I'm not keeping it well. Do you guys ever hear people say, abortion's okay, the fetus can't feel pain? Hear that a lot? We hear that a lot on campus. And so what we do, we get asked this question, would you kill a born person because of that circumstance? And I bring up this example of Gabby Gingras. Does anyone know who Gabby Gingras is? I think she was like on 2020, it was a while ago. She's probably a young teenager now. But Gabby Gingras has an incongenital insensitivity to pain. She cannot feel pain whatsoever. So she had goggles on her eyes as a kid because she would scratch at her eyes. She would chew her tongue like bubble gum because she thought it was fun. She could not feel anything whatsoever because of her condition. And so I asked them, I talk about Gabby and I say, Gabby cannot feel any pain. Is it okay for us to kill Gabby because she won't feel it? And they say, of course not, that's ridiculous, that's not the same thing. And I say, how is it not the same thing? Gabby Gingras is a human being, we know that. The preborn are human beings, we know that. Next slide, please. And of course, let's not forget the Downs babies. 9 out of 10 babies who have Downs are aborted. And I say, you know, people bring that up and I say, would you kill a little baby who has Downs, a little newborn who has Downs? Would it be okay to kill them because they have Down syndrome? And they say, well, of course not. And I say, so why do we kill them in utero? They're no different. And again, it just gets to the heart of the debate. So you can use this with any objection to a circumstance. Anytime anyone says that abortion is okay because of a certain circumstance, just compare that to a born person who's in the same circumstance. So now that you've kind of framed the debate, you've gotten rid of all these circumstantial evidence that kind of cloud the debate with just emotional circumstances, the worst circumstances, then you can actually get to the issue, what is the preborn? What is the preborn? Because again, that is the central question. So how we do this is we establish the scientific case for life, because they're not going to take any sort of biblical reasoning, they're not going to take any sort of philosophical reasoning, actually. Science is what they put their hope and trust in, you know? So you use science to show them, hey, it's on our side. And so the first thing you want to do in establishing the scientific case for life is to start out with talking about the DNA of the preborn. Sorry, next slide. Does anyone know how many chromosomes we all have? Going back to high school biology? 46. Yeah, we have 23 from mom, 23 from dad. The funny thing is that even though we have 23 from mom, 23 from dad, those 46 chromosomes are distinct in every way from mom and dad. We do not have the same DNA as our parents. We have our own DNA. And this DNA determines everything about us, our hair color, eye color, sex, personality, a lot of different things it determines. And so we know that at the very moment of fertilization, that little baby has their own DNA. And I found that this has a very weighty impact on a lot of people. Most people don't know that at all. And so I tell them, you know, that is a person. Everything about them is already set in place. Their own DNA, their own distinct DNA is already in place and set up. The second thing is the fact that the preborn are living. A lot of people actually, it's kind of funny when they come on campus and they're like, fetuses aren't alive. And I ask them, you know, how do they grow? If they're not alive, how do they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they're too big? How does that happen? And we also know, just in addition to the fact that this is common sense that they're alive, we know that the preborn meet all the scientific criteria for life. They react to stimuli, they have a metabolism, they grow, they reproduce. All the common scientific criteria for life, they meet every single one. And that is why embryologists don't debate the scientific fact that the preborn are human beings that are living. Thirdly, we know that the preborn are human. This is almost ridiculous, the fact that you have to make this point. I've never seen a pregnant woman and wondered, gosh, I wonder if she'll have a monkey fetus or a dog fetus or a whale fetus. I mean, we know it'll be a human fetus. There's no question about that. But the law of biogenesis states it very clearly that everything reproduces after its own kind. So we know that humans make humans, dogs make dogs, cats make cats. So it's funny when people say, well, it's not a human. Well, what is it? You ask them that and they can't answer you. Now, a lot of people will stop you right here and say, hold up. Are you saying that every time a man ejaculates or a woman releases an egg, that we should mourn the death of a human being? Well, of course not. We know that's ridiculous, right? Common sense tells us that, but also we know scientifically that they are confusing parts and wholes. Because we hear this argument all the time. We have people who come on campus who pretend to have funerals for, a woman releasing an egg. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. We know that there's something wrong there, right? And we tell them there is a difference between parts and wholes. That if you chop off my arm, chop off my leg, cut my hair, clip my fingernails, I am still me. I'm still Jami. Same with any of you, even though I've lost body parts. And the same is with this. We know that at the moment of fertilization, that tiny girl or tiny boy, that the moment of fertilization, they are directing their own development from within. It's not a robot that we're constructing. We're putting parts together and getting it to move. And that's what they're confusing it with. It's not a robot. It's a little tiny developing boy or girl. And so we need to establish the difference between parts, wholes, things that develop, things that are assembled. Humans aren't like that. Can you go to the next slide? So we know that this then really is the timeline of life. Sorry, can you click on it? People start from birth and they go to death, but we know that it actually starts at that one-celled zygote and goes till death. That is the conjecture of a human being's life. And this is what we're fighting against in our culture, what we're arguing for, that the broad spectrum of a human being's life is much longer than we currently have it. So the humanity of the preborn is really not up for debate. It's really not. And on campus, I kind of like to prove it and get over it because it's not something that embryologists sit around debating. Embryologists have already established this. And so the people who meet on campus, I fill them in. I say, hey, don't take my word for it. Look it up. Embryologists have already established this as scientific fact. Next slide, please. The Moore Prasad textbook at the top. A medical student of mine at OSU used that book in his when he was in medical school. That's the book he used. So it's a current book that says that at the moment, that a zygote created at fertilization is the beginning of a new human being. And Dr. Jerome Lejeune at the University of Descartes says that after fertilization has taken place, a new human being has come into being. It is plain experimental evidence. These are objective sources. These aren't religious people. These are scientists who are saying this is clear. Let's stop wasting time on it, right? Right, so that's why we're going to get to the second question, where the actual debate lies. This is a crucial question, but it's really only the first half of the debate that we have to do on campus, that we have to argue for. So before we get there, I want to take a little sidetrack. Next slide, please. There are what we call the hard cases, and someone mentioned this, but there are really only two, and that is rape and life of the mother. Rape is what we call a hard case, because when we walk onto campus with our signs of abortion victims and we talk to people, the very first thing they want to say is, you're really going to make a rape victim go through 9 months of pregnancy when she didn't ask for it, when she didn't consent to it, when she didn't want a baby? You really going to do that? Or are you really going to deny a woman who's going to die an abortion if that's what she needs? So we get these two. The purpose is to make us look awful, right? I mean, they go to the hard case and they say, look how insensitive and how awful and uncompassionate you are. So we have that stereotype when we're talking about the hard cases that we have to overcome. So with rape, how do we address this? Well, I've actually already kind of told you, and that is by comparing the born to the preborn. That is the best way. But because of this awful stereotype that we have, that they have put on us, we need to first express compassion. So I tell people, I've met rape victims on campus, and I tell them, I can't imagine what it would be like. I really can't imagine, but it's an awful, awful thing that we have to fight against. And so I tell them that I express compassion, but I don't stop there. I go on to ask them, but does that justify killing another human being? I don't know why, but sometimes it seems like they think that an abortion will unrape them. Nothing will unrape them. Nothing will go back and take away that trauma. Abortion will actually only add further trauma to the issue. It only makes things worse, and it doesn't fix a single thing. But by comparing the born to the preborn, I give them the example of a woman who, say she has a newborn, and that newborn was brought about by rape. And she looks down at that newborn and she's regretting the fact that she went through with the birth and had this baby, and she wants to kill that baby. She doesn't want to take care of this baby. Should she be able to do that? Of course not. And they would say so. They'd say, no, it's too late by then. Why? Because they're human beings. Because they're human beings. And so we always bring that up. I also just try to make the point that we always want to help. Abortion won't help; it only add further trauma. And secondly, life of the mother. This is the one where, again, people bring this up without really knowing the facts. And Scott Klusendorf of Life Training Institute says that there is really only one case that he is aware of where a woman will die if she's pregnant if she does not get medical help to help the situation. And that is with an ectopic pregnancy. Is anyone familiar with? Yeah, so in the case of an ectopic pregnancy, the baby implants somewhere other than the uterus, usually the fallopian tube, but it can be elsewhere. The baby implants not in the uterus, and as the baby grows in the fallopian tube, the tube will burst, the mother could hemorrhage and die. And so in that case, abortion advocates are saying, we need abortion, we need to do that. Well, in that case, and again, you want to establish this is the only case, medically, that we know where a woman needs medical intercession to save her life if she is pregnant. We don't do emergency abortions. We do emergency C-sections, So when the baby's older, we do what we can to save that life when the baby is developed, and we take that baby out. So this is the only situation before that moment. And in that case, we suggest a salpingectomy, which is a salpingectomy is where you take the part of the fallopian tube out of the mother that houses the baby. And that is a life-saving measure for the mother. Now, the pro-life ethic has always been to save as many lives as possible. And in the case of a salpingectomy, you save the mother's life. You really do. Now, people say, well, that's the same as an abortion, because the baby dies as a result. And we say, no, it's not the same thing, because in the case of an abortion, you are intentionally killing an innocent human being. That is your only directive. In the case of a salpingectomy, in the case of an ectopic pregnancy, you are working to save the mother's life. That is your goal. Because if the mother dies, the baby dies anyway. And so it's a matter of saving one life or saving none. And so the goal is always to save the most human lives as possible. And they say, well, you saw that baby's death. You saw that about to happen. And I say, well, say I'm in this building and there's a fire and I can only save one of you because I'm not super large, I will save the smallest person in the room and I will drag them out of here and save their life. Now I will look back and see that all of you will die in this fire, and I foresee that, and I'm sad about that, but it's not my fault because I can't do anything about it. So just because you foresee a bad result does not mean you're responsible for that bad result. I know it's kind of complicated and technical. I encourage you to look into it more. You can check out our FAQs on our website. It's a very common question, so I encourage you to be prepared to answer it, but it's something that can be a bit complicated to explain to others. Now, before we go on, I want to make a brief case for how we do things. Before we answer the second question that we must address with abortion advocates, I want to make a brief interlude to a very important issue. And probably many of you are familiar with this, but when we go on campuses, we use a lot of abortion victim imagery. We use images to point out the injustice, because seeing is believing. Seeing the truth opens your eyes like nothing else. It really does. And we see this over and over and over again. So before we go on, I want to make sure that we're all aware of what abortion is, of the atrocity of abortion. I know most of you are very familiar with it. So I'm going to show a video of abortion victim images, just so we can all be refreshed at how horrible it is. We always make clear, though, that there's always forgiveness and grace in Jesus, and we always explain this before we show this video to others. I encourage you to get the images out there to show your friends, because it does open eyes. It's uncomfortable, but it's so worth it. But I always explain beforehand that You know, I'm in need of the same forgiveness as the woman who had an abortion, even though I haven't had an abortion. I fall short just as much as she does of God's grace. And so we make that clear beforehand. If you choose to look away, that's fine. I'm not going to be looking at you to make sure you watch this or anything. It's simply there for you to see.
Years ago, there was a mother that had been in the hospital, or a woman that had been in the hospital for a very long time, was dying. And it was turned out it was around Christmas, and she said she wanted to go home to spend Christmas with her family, and they thought it was going to be too much, doctor was going to be too much stress and weaken her to the point she's going to die. Well, she's going to die anyway. So they finally got her, she got away and went home for Christmas and stuff, and spent a day or something over there, and then she came back to hospital and stuff. Well, after still some more time, grew some months or whatever, they come to find out that she was pregnant. And so the doctor said, you're barely sustaining, we're barely keeping you alive. You've got to get rid of this baby because it's draining everything from you and stuff. And the mother and the dad talked about it, they prayed about it and stuff, said, no, that's not in our control, our power and our control to be able to do that. So, and then all of a sudden, she started getting her strength and all this other stuff, and it came to be that somehow, I forgot all the details of it, but there's something that through the life of the baby growing, it gave health to the woman, and she fully recovered and had a healthy baby too.
You hear those stories and just wonder, if we did the right thing, like how often would it, work out much better than we think. But we're having technical difficulties with the videos, so that won't be able to happen. But if you want to see, it's on our website. You actually just go directly to our website and it's on the home page. I encourage you to do that. It always just encourages me to pray more for the preborn and reminds me of the daily slaughter that is happening. I don't see it always, and it's easy to get, even though I'm in pro-life work, it's easy to just go about my business and do the job and forget what's really happening every day. So I'm going to move on. I want to make a brief apologetic for the images, not necessarily because I think you need convincing or because I think you disagree, and maybe some of you do, but even if you don't, we need to explain to others why we use the images, because a bunch of pro-lifers have a big problem with it. They look at the images and they say, I'm pro-life, but this is not the way to do it. How dare you? You've heard this all the time. So the best, example of how images have been used to change minds, I always bring up the story of Emmett Till. Most of you are probably familiar with that, or no? How many have heard the story? Okay, great. Go ahead and next slide, please. Emmett Till was a 15-year-old black boy living in Chicago in the mid-1950s. And he went down to Muddy, Mississippi to the south to visit his relatives. And while he was there, he went to a corner store. And we're not sure exactly what happened. He either whistled at or said, hey babe, did something to the white woman behind the counter at the corner store. And that woman's relatives found Emmett Till later. They found him, beat him beyond recognition, shot him through the head, and dumped his body in the Tallahatchie River. His corpse was unrecognizable because of how badly he was injured, and they only recognized him because of a ring he had on his finger, is how they identified him. So they took his body back to Chicago, back to his mother, and when his mother, Mamie Till, saw his body, she said, we have to have an open casket funeral because I want people to see what has happened to my little boy. And so they did, and tens of thousands of people filed past this little boy's body at his funeral. It was also on the cover of Jet magazine, a very popular magazine at the time. It was in newspapers. It was all over this image. This image is graphic, and you probably already saw it, but if you choose to look away, it's very graphic. If you could, next slide. This was Emmett Till's body at his funeral, and this is what people saw as they went past his casket. Next slide, please. But the thing about this image is it had a profound impact on the civil rights movement. People always think it started with Rosa Parks on the bus, and in some ways it did. But it really started with Emmett, with this image, because Martin Luther King kept the ball rolling with these images. It didn't stop there. He saw what happened, how it changed people's perceptions of what was happening, the injustice, and he kept the ball rolling. And that's why we have so many images from the civil rights movement, impactful images of people being sprayed by fire hoses and getting attacked by dogs. Americans like you and me would turn on their TV at night, the news, and see this going on. And that's how perception changed. That's how social change happened with the civil rights movement. We also know that images have played a key role in other civil action movements. For example, child labor laws, they were passed because a man named Lewis Hine went out and took pictures and put them in newspapers. Newspapers of children who were working long hours, dangerous conditions. He took the pictures and put them everywhere. And people told him to stop. People didn't like it. And he kept doing it and kept doing it, and today historians credit him for the passage of anti-child labor laws. We also know this whenever we see a campaign, a social campaign of an anti-smoking ad or an anti-texting and driving ad or anti-meth billboards. All of those have been used and all of them have been graphic and shocking. And all of them have been effective. We know this because we can look at statistics and see, oh hey, that went down. We know that it works. The same is true with the pro-life movement. You know, if it's that bad, if it's so awful, then why are we not showing it? I mean, I would think the act is way worse than the image, you know? A lot of people say that we're doing a harm to these babies by showing their desecrated bodies. I say that's not the issue. The issue is the fact that they were ripped apart. Innocently ripped apart. That is the issue. And so when people talk to you about this, just say, why wouldn't we use the same tactic that everyone else in history and social campaigns have used? We know that images change minds. We know that images change the way we feel. And so why don't we use them in this case? So now that you've kind of established that, you can go on to your second crucial question to ask your abortion advocate. Next slide. Oh yeah, there it goes. So are we all created equal? Because once you've established that the preborn are human and that they're scientifically just like you and me, then you can go on to ask, are we all created equal? Why do we deny them life and yet born people have life and are protected by law? Next slide, please. We know that in the past that we have said that other people were not equal because of the color of their skin. We've said that other people were not equal because they were of a different sex. And now we are saying that other people are not equal because of their age. Because all the differences between the preborn and us are relative to age. Once that baby hits 9 months or 8 months or what have you, that baby is old enough to now be considered a person and has all the same rights as you and I. A great illustration of this, a great example of this prejudice is found in Clifford Grovestein's Science and the Unborn. You would think he was a pro-life person based on this quote. Next slide, please. Is the single zygote cell that begins the profound transformation human? Scientifically, there is no question the zygote is certainly human to its core. This is a guy who says, of course they're human. We know that. Next slide, please. But then he goes on to say the central point is that the embryo, though increasingly to be valued, remains too immature structurally, functionally, and behaviorally to warrant classification as a person. That just blows my mind. That this person with a lot of influence is saying, well, of course they're human, but they're not a person. Now, we know this is not good based on the fact of when in the past we have said, oh, they don't classify as persons. We know what happened to the Jews, we know what happened to African Americans, we know what happened to other classes of human beings when they experience this sort of prejudice. They've been exterminated, just like they're being exterminated now. So this is a deadly, deadly ideology that we have to point out. Now, Clifford Grovestein does have one thing right, and this you want to admit. The preborn are very, very different from you and I. Very different, and we don't want to deny that fact. We want to admit that point. That is true. The preborn are very different, but we are saying that just because they are different does not mean they don't classify as people. Next slide, please. So when you're talking with your abortion advocate, they'll often say things like, they're not self-aware, or they're microscopically too small, or they can't dream dreams, they can't take care of themselves. So when they say things like that, you want to use this little acronym called SLED. Some of you may have heard of this before. A man named Stephen Swartz looked at all the differences between the preborn and us. He looked at all the differences and classified them into these two categories. And pretty much any difference you can think of will fit into one of these categories. And the first one, of course, is size. This is when you hear those people who say, you know, it's not a person, you can't even see it without a microscope. Or it's not a person, so it's this big. They're saying that they don't count because they're too small. Secondly, they'll say that the preborn are not as developed as you and I. A woman at Columbus State Community College told me one time, she's like, well, that's ridiculous. Fetuses can't dream dreams. They're not self-aware. They can't form relationships. And I said, true, right? It's true. Thirdly, they say that the preborn are, they're in utero, that they don't count because they're inside of another person. A girl at Otterbein who was protesting us, she told me, persons don't live inside of other persons, is what she said. I said, actually, in this case, they do. It's a weird circumstance, right? It's pretty cool. And then fourthly, they say that the preborn, or fetuses, are too dependent on others. They say you can't be a person and be dependent and attached to someone else. So these are why they say the preborn don't count. And when they say these things, again, all you need to do is really compare the preborn to the born. So I have a tiny little cousin, her name's Lane, and Lane is about that tall. She's super tiny, and I think she's 3, maybe 2 or 3. And when I look at Lane, I look at her and I look at myself, and I see that all these differences up here on the screen, all of them are the same with me and Lane. And so these differences exist between preborn and born people. And if these differences are what make us not people, not persons, then you and I in this room are all in grave danger, because I look around and I see different sizes, I see different levels of self-awareness, and I see different levels of dependency.
Amen.
I guarantee you I'm way more dependent on my parents than you guys are right now. So I know too that as far as environment, that today I was in Columbus and I came here and I'm going to walk out of this building and I'm going to change my location probably 10 times today. But I'm not going to change as a person just because I change my environment. It's ridiculous. So we know that even if these differences exist, that if different levels of development and self-awareness and different levels of dependency exist, that it does not change our personhood. And if it does, we're in grave, grave danger. So I invite our abortion advocates to consider what kind of world they want to live in. Do they want to live in a world where every human being is valuable no matter what they can contribute and do? Or do they want to live in a world where they are assessed on what they can contribute to society, assessed on what they are as a person? And I ask them what kind of world they want to live in and what kind of world they want to work towards. So we have to ask, are human beings valuable because of of who they are or what they do? Sorry, next slide. And keep going. Thanks. This is where the battle lies, is the equality of humankind in our society. Growing up, I used to think that we were pretty equal because we didn't own slaves anymore. I realized when I grew up that was pretty naive. And it's a sad thing, but no, we are facing grave, grave inequality. So when we're talking with people about this, we wanna open their eyes, we wanna invite them to consider a world, a country that declares all human beings valuable, whether they have Down syndrome, whether they're elderly and can't contribute, whether they are as developed. We wanna invite them to that world. So when you're doing this, use these apologetics in love, use them in graciousness, try to open their eyes. And the last thing I want to ask is that you consider ways you can do this in your life. You know, a lot of people make a daily habit of talking to people about this kind of thing. And I watch those people and I wanted to be like them. So look at them. It's not too late to start doing this. You develop a habit. So I encourage you to look at the people around you and start those conversations. As awkward as they might be, as difficult as they might be, I've learned that they usually go over way better than I think they are. So, and I've done it so many times now, I just don't really care. You get pretty comfortable with it. So I invite you to do that. The last thing we're going to go over are just some tactics when you're talking with people, just some ways you can deliver this information well. A lot of it is just talking about it in a way that's gracious and kind, but a lot of it is just using tactical conversations. Next slide, please. Actually, next 2 slides. That's great. So the first thing you want to do, and this I can't emphasize enough, is just to ask good questions. Ask good questions. They have this stereotype of us that they just think we're just going to pummel them with information and ideology and what we believe in. That's true sometimes. There's definitely a place for that, but we want to be open to what they have to consider, and we want to ask them good questions. Questions will open up the flaws in their thinking. I've learned that goes way farther than just saying what I think. So I ask them, why do you think that some human beings are valuable whereas others are not? Do you think that's a problem? You know, I mean, they're leading questions, but ask them. Point out the flaws in their thinking. A really great question to ask is, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? It's a great question when people say things that they don't actually know what they mean. Like, I'm pro-choice. I say I am too, you know? I'm totally pro-choice. I think women should decide what college they want to go to. I think they should decide who they want to marry. I think women should decide what they want to wear. I think they should decide a lot of things. But I don't think they should decide whether to kill another human being. Do you think all choices are the same? Do you think there are some good choices or some choices that we should not be allowed to make because they're wrong? So ask good questions. The second thing is to share stories. People love this stuff, they eat it up. So share stories about your personal life, about places where you have experienced things. I talk about my grandparents who aren't able to contribute much to society, and I just ask them, you know, do you think my grandparents should not be allowed to live because they aren't functioning at the same high capacity that I am? Or do you think they have value? You know, of course they're not going to tell me that I think my grandparents should be dead, so they say, well, yeah, of course they have value. And I'm like, yes, they do. You know, they have more wisdom than I do, and they have more to contribute than I do. I tell them that, and they don't quite know what to do with that. So share stories, talk about Gabby humors, talk about the people you know who have had ectopic pregnancies, share stories. Thirdly, find common ground. Find common ground. This is an area I think traditionally we've been kind of bad at. I know I have. We actually have a lot of common ground with abortion advocates. You wouldn't think so. But one area where you can find common ground is that we generally, us and abortion advocates generally, think it's wrong to kill born people. It's common ground. They generally think that human life has value. So build on that. Human lives have value. We also generally think that we should protect innocent human beings. Most people think that you should protect innocent human beings. That's a duty, a job you have. So point that out. A lot of people are against injustice. Most people are against injustice. So point out, you know, should we work to end injustice? So there's a lot of areas of common ground. Find them and then build on them. Find where you disagree and then work at that point. And then lastly, consider logical conclusions. This is one I think is really, really great. It's really handy. People often say things like, the world is overpopulated. We need abortion to keep the population at bay. And I ask them, well, what is the logical conclusion of that? That we need to start killing people. I mean, if the world's overpopulated, what are we waiting for? Why are we wasting time? Let's start working on it now. I said, are you volunteering? And they say, well, no, you know. I say, well, who should we start killing? The elderly? The young? Shouldn't we start killing those who've already lived? Should we cut off them at an age? You know, if it's a grave situation, then let's get going. And that kind of freaks them out, which is good. So consider the logical conclusions of what they're saying. They say pro-choice, you know. I always ask them, does that apply to everything? Should a man have a choice to use his body to rape a woman? Of course not. Of course not. So again, consider the logical conclusions. These are just some tactics you can use that will help you hopefully just kind of know how to wheedle through the times when they kind of assault you, barrage you with their questions, with their opinions. So it can be overwhelming. So just work your way through. If anything, asking good questions, it buys you time to think. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to say to this person. Ask a question, it gives you more information, it gives you time to think and formulate an answer. So do all of that, and I encourage you to just get out there to have these conversations. There was a man, I'm just going to close with this story, there was a man named Nicholas Swinton who he was a British diplomat, lived in England, and he went to Czechoslovakia to visit, to take a vacation actually with his friend, a skiing vacation. And while he was there, he found that he was not going to take a skiing vacation, but that actually his friend worked with Jewish refugees who were making their way out of Europe to safety. And a lot of the adults were not able to get out because they had already been found. They were already being taken to concentration camps, but their children were left. And so Nicholas went and saw his friend working with these Jewish refugees and decided to help. So he went to a hotel room, cleared off the hotel kitchen table, and started an office there. And he arranged the Kindertransport, which was a train system that rescued children of these Jewish refugees, these people who were being taken off to concentration camps. He rescued hundreds and hundreds of children. And he did this because he was just in that place at that time, and he saw the need and he did something. Having a conversation doesn't feel as cool as what Nicholas Swinton did. It doesn't feel like rescuing children. But I've learned that I've had random conversations with people that later turned out to save a life. You never know where that seed's going to be planted when you're going to save a little boy or a little girl from being dismembered. And that's just the truth. So I encourage you to get out there to have these conversations and to talk with people. So, thank you.